I saw this week new data from Peter McCrory, who is Anthropic's head of economics, stating that AI hasn't moved unemployment yet. Obviously, there's a lot of context and nuance in that. But he's looking at the broadest data set in the US, as they're the highest adopters, so it's probably the best canary anyway. Still nothing meaningful in the numbers, he says. Obviously a vested interest there. However, it's not AI won't take your job. It's more a case of AI hasn't yet taken your job because it still needs you to steer and catch mistakes. Mads,
the wolf is coming. The wolf is coming.
Yeah, I think there is an interesting non-future based aspect to his writing, and obviously we'll see how it pans out. Elon reckons we've got 5 years until AI won't need us. Over here, obviously, we have a little bit more legal regulatory sticking mud, quicksand, so we're going to be naturally slower to adopt. So we can always look west and see what's happening there, and then maybe catch it in time. Maybe that's a little bit too happy ears. I'll see. Also, interestingly, I saw this week that Trump is trying to ban or threatening to ban Chinese open source models. I think it's turning more into just creating shed loads of friction rather than a ban because it feels a bit nuts. Axios ran the story on Monday. The White House immediately denied it. That sounds bonkers. It feels like it would be a spectacular own goal on the US economy should there be anything more stringent. But Mads, how do you think about this, and where would you take this one?
So many aspects, Dan. Where would you like me to start?
Well, the thing that really kind of poked me in the eye was any version of a ban on open source made me think, well, if there's anything that looks like that, surely that gives the rest of the world and Europe a leg up. I mean,
I think banning open source is really hard. I mean, that's banning freedom of speech.
And it's out there. It's already out.
Yeah,
right?
it's out there. It's out there. So I think you can't do that. What you can do is you can hit the procurement line. You could say, just like, we've had GPL, right? We've had, for folks that are unfamiliar with GPL and copyleft. So open source, kind of the whole idea is that you have software that has an open source code that people can download the source code and modify it and embed it in their own technology, etc. And when you have open source code, it's distributed under a licensing regime. And there are different licensing regimes. Some of them are very permissive, meaning the open source can be used for whatever you want. Some of them are more stringent. It may be the licensing regime says you can use it for your own private purposes, but if you use it commercially, you have to pay. And still others are saying, if you use this open source code for any commercial purposes, we own you. And that was sort of the idea of GPL and the whole copyleft, not copyright, but copyleft movement that says, look, if people are being mean capitalists and using this free-spirited open source software for nefarious commercial purposes, we'll get them. And that's a problem, of course, for businesses. And so as an industry, we've been all over this and tried to make sure that nobody uses the wrong open source code in their products. Well, could the US government do the same thing? Can they say, if you use a KMK3 anywhere in your supply chain, can we then say that means you will not be eligible to sell to the US government, for example? So we're not banning free speech. We're not banning the use of models. You just can't sell to us. We're going to cut off a huge part of the market. And of course, that's complicated because even if you as a business only sell to other private companies, well, they may be selling to government. So government has got a huge reach in that sense. And that is probably the way one would go if one wanted to do this. And could it happen? I mean, if you open AI and if you're Anthropic, that is, of course, what you're hoping for, because you're looking at you charging Fable at $50 a million tokens and saying somebody could download some open source off the web running on their own servers and run inference at a fraction. Now, interestingly, there's a point here because we're talking about $50 versus $15, I think was the number.
It's not as big as I thought. I thought it was going to be a 10x. It's not as big as I thought.
Well, so that is the cost to run it off Moonshot servers. It'll be cheaper. It'll have a different price in different places. However, a token is not a token because different models have different reasoning efficiency. Now, it used to be, I asked my model a question, it'll come back, it'll do a single pass and then come back with an answer. But the powerful thing today is the reasoning, where the model reasons with itself and thinks through different problems. And what we have seen is that Fable is actually quite an efficient model at reasoning and can get to answers with fewer tokens than a KMK3 can.
Okay.
So a token is not just a token. And so expect lots more interesting evolution here. Now, I think the Chinese will eventually figure this out and become much more efficient because they build for efficiency and they'll keep hammering at it until they work it out. But right now, the gap is not as wide as one would be led to think.
The Himike 3 weights are being released on the 27th of July, right? So
yes,
Monday.
Yeah, Monday. Yeah.
But Mads, we talked about this before, is that the Chinese have been thinking about basically stopping that, right? The stopping the companies from releasing the weight.
It's been discussed.
But if that happens, then you have a problem, right? If you're sitting in Europe.
Potentially. I mean, I think in that situation, I think NVIDIA would clean up because, as we spoke about, they've already got their Nemotron, they've already got the open source model. They've been holding back from perfecting it because their customers are all the frontier labs, but they're all rolling their own silicon today. Google is rolling their own TPUs. Anthropic is using TPUs, right? Everybody is doing their own stuff. So what's holding NVIDIA back from saying, well, great, we will just up our efforts on the Nemotron and release an awesome open source model? What is the 101 of strategy?
Really, they would do that. They would do that.
Well, you should commoditize your complements. What is the primary complement to a GPU?
Yeah,
it's the model. Right? If we all have free models, what do we all need to run them? GPUs. So I think this is what I could see happening if the Chinese pull back. So I actually don't think there's a whole lot for them to win here, but we'll see.
Any notes on the Hugging Face hack, Mads?
I think it's super interesting.
Do you think it's PR?
No, it's hard to say where the line goes. I do think it was great, Dan, as you said on episode 87, you said this is going to happen. It happened more quickly than some people had thought. And what was interesting in all of this is Hugging Face. What do they do when you're hacked? Well, you turn to your trusted AI to try and work out what's going on. And what is your trusted AI? Well, that's the good one you have from Anthropic, right? But that's guardrails. So as they were being hacked, as they turned to Fable to try and work out what's going on and defend themselves, oops, the classifier came out and said, well, you're using it for some cyber defense stuff, as you're not authorized to do that. So they had to go to the Chinese models to defend themselves from the OpenAI attack.
Oh my goodness, how the web weaves. Oh my goodness. And also, who knows what's going on behind the scenes as well.
Yes.
Anything on the circular financing, the AMD Anthropic deal, anything in there that caught your eye that was worth talking about?
It doesn't excite me that much. I think, everybody's so excited talking about Lucent and Nortel. I think this is completely different. It's not like they are putting money towards buying kit that isn't being used and sits in a dark, dusty room.
And it's been around for years. I mean, this kind of the auto industry has been at this for years as well. It's not like a novel way of doing business.
It doesn't excite me that much. I think we should watch out for, does the revenue keep growing? Can the firms keep monetizing? And if they can, this is fine. And if they can't, that's an issue. But then the issue is not the vendor financing. The issue is the monetization at the front end.
Yeah. So everyone's going to keep dancing while the music is playing, baby. Anything else in it? I mean, the McCrory piece, it feels like a nothing burger, but is there anything from either of you on the McCrory AI jobs thing?
Dario, who is McCrory's boss, has been saying that the AI is coming for your jobs.
Yeah, he's been saying the opposite for years, hasn't he?
Yeah, and now McCrory's saying, well, the numbers are actually supporting that. And I think that's what we're seeing in general. So there is a huge amount of scaremongering. And is it plausible that there will be displacement? Absolutely. But we're just not seeing it yet.
No, I think the interesting thing to watch will be the entry level jobs piece. That's the thing that kind of worries me the most personally. But it's not sizable enough in the metrics yet. So we'll see how that one pans out.